Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Sunday Matinee. We are on episode 23. I am your host, Ben Stahl, and going around my little clock here, I have joining me tonight, Sarah Moore.
Hello.
Gary Chambers.
Hey, everybody.
And joining us live from Westview, New Jersey, is Jalen Green. Jalen, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, standing outside what remains of the Hex, reporting to you live from Westview, New Jersey. Doing well. Good to see you guys.
It's good to have someone on the scene because this is, of course, a Wanda Vision spoiler cast. So if you have not watched WandaVision, if you have not gotten all the way to the end, if you have not even seen the mid and post-credit scene in that final episode, you may want to tune out after the news because we are not holding back. If we have something we want to say about WandaVision, we are going to, and there is so much to say about this show.
Really?
But first, what's been going on in the news? It's actually been a pretty slow news week, and I think that may have a lot to do with the fact that we were all just really excited about this big finale. But things did happen in the interim. First and foremost, Game of Thrones star Indira Varma has joined the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. Playing who? We have no idea. We really don't know much about this series, except that it's going to land sometime probably next year with Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen. Hopefully some cool lightsaber battles, and at least at one moment where Obi-Wan Kenobi can say, "Hello there."
Yes.
Also, side note, if you liked Indira Varma in Game of Thrones, you will love her in the earlier HBO series Rome, which made Game of Thrones look like a children's show.
I agree completely on all of those counts. I miss you, Rome. Where's my Rome reboot?
And if you haven't caught Rome or any other HBO show, why, you're probably one of those poor suckers like me who's got HBO Max to watch all of those movies this year and can do that in the downtime. But in other news, in what has got to be the funniest news of the week, Hugh Grant and Sophia Lillis have joined the cast of Dungeons and Dragons. In other words, yes, they're trying to do Dungeons and Dragons, the movie, again. It looked pretty bad the last time. I absolutely didn't bother. I mean, not even Jeremy Irons could get me into the theater to see it. And so, and he would be the right kind of person for it. But yeah, Dungeons and Dragons, probably something they should just not touch ever again. So moving on, Peter Rabbit 2 in movie delays and shuffling news, Peter Rabbit 2 has actually moved up to May. I still think they should just put this one on Easter weekend and throw it on streaming for all the little children because it's clearly an Easter movie. Meanwhile, Fast 9 has been delayed into June, and A Quiet Place 2 has been moved up to Memorial Day. John Krasinski hopped onto Twitter to announce that himself. This is really cool. And I have gotten to a point where if I am to get fully vaccinated soon, I might be more willing to go out to see a movie in the theater, of course, masked, and to make sure that I am still avoiding a crowded Cineplex. Thankfully, I don't work on Mondays, which means that Monday matinees, when most people are at work and children are at school, are the perfect time for someone like me to get out there and catch a movie all by my lonesome. So A Quiet Place 2 would be, I think, a great one to do that with, as well as Black Widow, which is still holding steady in its early May release. Moving on, The Simpsons has been renewed for 2 more seasons, putting it up to 34 seasons altogether. That's it passed the record for longest running sitcom a while ago, right? I mean, it has to have.
Yeah, I think it's broken every record now in terms of that.
Like, obviously, shows like Saturday Night Live and sketch comedy shows and those type of shows get the longest record. But yeah, The Simpsons, I don't know how it's made it this long. I fell off shortly after like season 14 or 15. Frankly, I think Futurama should have been the one to go longer. But what do I know? They're clearly doing something right. And finally, Jumanji 4 is in the early stages of development. I'm taking this as very good news. I was a big fan of Welcome to the Jungle, which was the first one to star Dwayne Johnson, Jack Black, Karen Gillan, and Kevin Hart. I didn't see the follow-up, but I heard that if you liked it, if you liked Welcome to the Jungle, that you'd be satisfied with that one. So the fact that they're moving on to another one is great. I'm all for that.
Yeah, the new one, the next level is great. Next level is great, just as good as the last one.
It's worth the price of admission just for Aquafina.
Yeah,
She's
really
amazing.
Is. Yeah, and Jonas the greatest. Jonas the greatest.
Before we actually jump into WandaVision, I wanted to start adding a new segment to the program. I just wanted to ask, so did anyone happen to catch any new movies this weekend, or just go back and watch something classic? I know some of us out here may have watched Raya and the Last Dragon, which also dropped on Friday night and could be unlocked on Disney Plus through Premier Access. Sarah, did you watch anything fun this weekend?
Just WandaVision.
Well, we'll be talking about that soon enough. Gary, did you watch anything new or great this weekend?
Yeah, it's award season, so we of course watched WandaVision and Raya. We watched last night, which I declare brilliant. Its artistry is incomparable. It's again Disney taking CG animation to the next level, but that's for another show. We also caught Nomad Land this week, which is tremendous, and Supernova we saw this week, which Stanley Tucci turns in a performance. In fact, both of them just turn in performances that are just okay. Just give one of them the Oscar now. Let's just skip the line and get that done. It's a subtle film. It's poignant. It's tear-jerking. It's just reeks with charm and poignancy. It's a lovely film.
And Nomad Land is on Hulu, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I know I can catch that. I know a lot of people are trying to catch that one. Jalen, did you watch anything awesome this weekend?
I did. I actually I saw an older movie and a new movie this week. I saw, for the very first time, I saw a film called City of Ember, which is one of Saoirse Ronan's first movies, based off a YA novel. Bill Murray's in it, plays the bad guy, which is something I've never seen Bill Murray do. Fascinating little sci-fi story. And Coming to America, which is just as good as the first one, even 33 years later. So I highly enjoyed it. It was very, very, very funny. It's the same team that did Dolomite Is My Name. So the last Eddie Murphy movie, and Wesley Snipes is in it as well. So streaming on the Amazon Prime.
Well, I didn't watch anything new this weekend, but I did, while I was working the other night, watch for the first time in a while The Grand Budapest Hotel, which is just one of those wonderful Wes Anderson films. I do plan on watching Raya and the Last Dragon at some point, possibly tonight. I've already unlocked it. I have spent my $30, so at this point, I am committed. And after Gary's glowing review, I don't think I'm going to regret that at all. In fact, just based on its Rotten Tomatoes score and pretty much word of mouth on social media, period, I don't think I'm going to be upset at all. So that's cool. That is great. Good to know that we are all keeping our brains focused while we're all still kind of stuck indoors and whatnot, even though it's getting nicer outside. Isn't that great? And we're going to start seeing later sunsets. So that is something to look forward to. But for now, we're going to talk about WandaVision. WandaVision. Well, what can we say about WandaVision? So if you maybe wanted to figure out what the heck happened to people after Avengers Endgame, this is where we're going to start. This is where Phase 4 begins, everyone. It's not where we thought it was going to start, but it's what we got. And it sees Wanda and Vision at home, seemingly in the 1950s, living in a sitcom. And with each progressive episode, we move forward a decade, and we move forward in style with the show they're trying to present. Until at one point, we finally realize that someone has been pulling some strings, and that person is. I don't think it was too difficult to figure out she was going to be a villain, but it was a wonderful reveal nonetheless. And by the grand finale, we get into what is it definitely feels like an MCU show at that point. But before we get to the end, WandaVision definitely was the most unique take on anything that they had done for the MCU at this point. Now, some of you may think, well, where would they get the idea for something like this? Just 1 second. So a lot of people out there may be telling you that you need to go out there and read House of M. So this is a Marvel Avengers X-Men crossover storyline, because it should be noted that in the comic books, both Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were mutants to begin with, first appearing in the pages of X-Men. So here's what happened in House of M, and this is way crazier, but less goofy than what we got in WandaVision. The Avengers and the X-Men have been called together to decide the final fate of the Scarlet Witch, whose reality-altering mutant powers threaten the fabric of the Marvel Universe. As the heroes argue for the life of their former teammate, a wave of white light engulfs them all. In just an instant, the entire Marvel Universe is changed forever. House of M is a world far different from before. Now mutants rule over mankind under the iron hand of Magneto and his children, Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch. Only a few scattered groups of heroes still exist in resistance against mutant domination. With only Wolverine remembering the world as it should be, how can they succeed in overthrowing the House of M? So, obviously, the scale to which they approached WandaVision was much smaller than they did in the comic books. But there was also far more characters to deal with at this point in the comics, and far more grand circumstances. House of M actually is one of the events in the comic books that leads to Civil War. And in the comic books, it's Wanda who suffers a mental breakdown, and that is what kills Vision and Hawkeye and Ant-Man. And that is what leads to this. So thankfully, we did not have to go through that torture in the films or this program. But now that we have a little bit of context of where it came from, let's talk about WandaVision. So, Gary, I'm gonna go diagonally here. We're gonna go to you first. What were your thoughts? You just your blurb, your strengths, your weaknesses. What did you get out of WandaVision?
When the first couple of episodes aired, what is this? This is bizarre. I just felt like I had been dropped into the middle of something that had echoes of the MCU, but wasn't the MCU. It was Scarlet Witch and Vision, but dropped into this environment that was just completely baffling. But I was assured that as long as you go along with the ride and accept that there's something beyond what we actually see, just enjoy this fusion between the MCU and the television programming that some of us grew up with and some of us saw in syndication later on in life. You go through Dick Van Dyke and the Brady Bunch, etc. And that combination between the two, the MCU, which is familiar in recent history, and the deeper history of the sitcoms, both of which are intimately familiar, all of a sudden they came together and it became believable. So one of the greatest strengths is the believability that this was plausible, that this wasn't something that was so far-fetched that we can't get past the suspension of disbelief. I got bought in within the second episode. All right, I see what's happening here. We're going from decade to decade. What does that mean? And you just can't wait to get to the next one. I also think that one of the greatest assets was that they didn't make this into an hour-long program. that they gave it to us in the 30-minute chunks that you would get from a sitcom back in the day, which would have been with commercials 23 or 24 minutes. With the lengthy end credits and the lengthy opening sequence, once you get to the meat of the program, that's really what we're seeing here. And you can't wait to get to the next episode. So anticipation was one of its greatest strengths. One of the weaknesses, ironically, became one of the strengths later on. I kept thinking, where's the MCU in this MCU program? But you have to wait for it. You have to be patient. But in the early going, in the first, say, half of the episodes, I kept saying, we need more MCU here. There's not enough of that. I'm done with the sitcom. But the payoff at the end turns that liability into a huge asset.
I have to agree with you on patience for those first few weeks, and possibly even to this day. I haven't talked to him since, but I had a coworker who could not get through the first 5 minutes of episode 1.
Oh.
And by the time we got to episode 4, where yes, the walls have broken open and we get to see the world outside of the hex, he still hadn't seen it. And all my coworkers were saying, you need to like get through to the end of episode 3, like, because that's when you start to realize that this isn't just a sitcom. So you're absolutely right, Gary. It was definitely, it's definitely a long con, so to speak. But I, as someone who spent, their early childhood years watching I Love Lucy and whatnot on Nick at Night in syndication, as Gary pointed out, I fully appreciated those first 2 episodes for what they were and knew exactly what they were going for, and had a wonderful time with it, and wasn't bothered by the fact that things weren't blowing up and that we didn't have any sort of your typical MCU shenanigans going on for a little bit. But it was the right point to break that fourth wall. Quite literally, I believe oh no, it's not until episode 7 is the title, Breaking the Fourth Wall, which is the Modern Family style episode. But they break that fourth wall literally when they break through the hex. So, Sarah, what were your thoughts going into this?
I kind of agree with what you just said. I actually really enjoyed the first few episodes. Maybe it's just because in this like COVID time, I've been really going for nostalgia. And yeah, I felt like the level of detail and how much I felt like I was watching a sitcom from the 50s, a sitcom from the 70s, a sitcom from the 80s. Especially for me being a child of the 80s. When I got to that 80s episode, I was like, so often when they spoof the 80s, it's like so over the top. That was like exactly the shows I used to watch when I was a kid. Like exactly. Down to the layout of the house. Like it was crazy.
Like Family Ties or Growing Pains, something like that.
Those are the shows I watched like all the time when I was a kid.
And those theme songs are glorious, but
yeah, the theme song was like so perfect. But I thought they were really funny. They made me laugh. Like the first few episodes, like I was almost kind of actually sad when it got to like where they weren't like following the sitcom formula anymore. I mean, I was enjoying the story, but it was kind of like, I don't know. I was really enjoying like the satire of it and the fact that these problems they were getting into had to do with their superpowers that they had to hide. Like that was kind of funny, and I felt like it gave those actors like a really like the whole series gave Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany just like a great like variety of things to play. Like they got to be big and funny and over the top, and then they got to be like small and serious and intense. So yeah, I actually really liked that part, and I had no doubt that it was going to lead into something like bigger. But yeah, so I like that. I liked that it was something different. And it was fun and it was funny. So yeah, I would say I really like that part. I don't know. I think the only weakness for me was like the villain, the guy, I forget what his name is, the guy who was like running the special ops, the kind of over the top government villain. He was a little to me.
Haywood.
Yeah, like he was just a little boring, like run of the mill. I mean, not, I know he's not like, there's Agatha, which is, but I found him to be that kind of part of it to be a little like but it was a small part of it. So I enjoyed the cameos from the side characters. I got blanking on their names. The guy from, I think it was Ant-Man, and then the girl from Thor, who was like the best friend.
Oh yeah, Jimmy and Darcy.
Yeah. Jimmy and Darcy.
And Pietro.
Yeah, that I loved. I was like, he said they recast Pietro.
They recast Pietro. What?
And I'm like, it was so great because you were just talking about how this storyline came from the X-Men, and he was the one who played him in X-Men. So I thought that was hilarious. But
yeah,
that moment was great for me because that was my jaw dropping, and suddenly all kinds of fan theories rushing through my head. And meanwhile, my mom is sitting 5 feet away, who had only seen Days of Future Past like once, and didn't see Apocalypse or any of the other X-Men films with him in it. So it's been 7 years since Days of Future Past. So she has to turn to me and say, "I don't get it." It's like, okay, Mom. I showed her the entire kitchen scene from Days of Future Past, because that is still one of the coolest scenes in a Marvel movie, even if it's not MCU. And he is, and I'm also glad they brought him in because, no offense to Aaron Johnson, but like Evan Peters' Quicksilver was much more interesting, even just in Days of Future Past.
He was like the best part of American Horror Story. I hope we see him a lot more. I hope we see him in
He is good on that show. He is really good on that show.
Yeah. I mean, that show is a kind of a back and forth depending on this, but the seasons he was in, he was always really good.
Yeah.
So, Jalen, it is your turn. What were your strengths, your weaknesses, your overall thoughts of this show?
Oh man, those first 2 episodes were glorious. I mean, there were little hints of the MCU sprinkled throughout, but it was great, as Sarah said, to just see 2 actors just get glorious, 2 great actors just get glorious material and completely run with it. And I mean, I've been a fan of Paul Bettany's since A Knight's Tale, and I also don't think he's been used very well since A Knight's Tale, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 things. Like, I mean, with the exception of maybe Master and Commander and A Beautiful Mind, like, I'm not sure what else you've seen Paul Bettany in that you've enjoyed over the last 20 years.
You ever seen a movie called The Reckoning?
The Reckoning.
I think it's called it's like, it takes place like in the Dark Ages, and he's like a monk who got thrown out because he slept with someone's wife, and there's like some kind of a murder mystery. That's kind of a good movie.
Okay.
But not very well known. Anyway.
Okay. But, and I'm not really all that familiar with Elizabeth Olsen's career before, or Elizabeth Olsen's non-Marvel projects. So I'm very curious to kind of revisit some of those. But man, just seeing him go through, just seeing all those shows just recreated so perfectly. And as it progressed, just all the wonderful family ties, going to Malcolm in the Middle, which was unexpected, but that was wonderful. And Elizabeth Olsen's pitch perfect Julie Bowen impression from Modern Family, Paul Bettany's wonderful Tyrell impression. Like, it was great. It was different. It was wonderful. The ending might have wrapped itself up better, but I did get the cameo that I wanted, or a cameo that I wanted. Well, I mean, we did get a big cameo in the last episode, even if it wasn't quite what we expected, but we'll get into that a little bit later. And there's something I definitely want to talk about, one of the end credit scenes, but it was truly amazing. And if anything, I wish that they could have spoofed even more sitcoms before we got into the main MCU. Like, I would have loved to have seen the Avengers do Arrested Development, or I would have loved to have seen them branch out and then maybe like spoof like drama shows. Like, let's get Wanda and Vision on a cop show. Maybe let's get him in like a Star Trek parody. or like an A-Team parody or something, or like Law and Order or something. Like, I would have seen how far they could have taken it. Like, I could have watched like 52 episodes of Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen just spoofing television shows before you give me a plot. Like, it was that good.
Paul Bettany's voice is so soothing and sweet. I'd listen to that man read the freaking alphabet.
Yeah.
Yeah, does he do any audiobooks? I need to look that up.
Right?
Sure it does.
Hello, I'm Paul Bettany.
Jalen, your point there actually, that's going to lead me to a special improvised question. So I'm going to ask Gary and Sarah, and I'll just say right now, you're right. That would have been fun if they could have gone into more shows to spoof. For me, it would be the sitcom that I still hold to the absolute highest ranks, and that's Community. Because I never got into like the 90s and the early aughts sitcoms. Like Community was, or Community and Parks and Rec were the ones that really dragged me back to the television finally after so many years. And you kind of get the Parks and Rec vibe from the Modern Family stuff, because Parks and Rec also does the whole, documentary style stuff, at least in its earlier episodes. But I mean, also, wouldn't it be funny if they'd had Chris Pratt?
Yeah.
So Sarah, what specific show, if you could pick one, would you want them to have spoofed or homage?
Well, I would be down with Arrested Development. That would be great. The other one, I was just thinking it would be funny to see like a Walking Dead spoof.
Oh yeah.
Well, Sarah, you may be in for a treat, because on the What If animated series that's supposed to drop this summer, they have hinted that they are going to do an episode that revolves around the Marvel Zombies comic books.
Ah.
So we may get to see I believe Captain America is the one who's prominently shown on the cover of like the first issue of Marvel Zombies. So we're probably going to see a little undead Steve Rogers going on. So that'll be fun. Gary, what show would you absolutely love to see WandaVision pay tribute to?
I know it's an ensemble show, but I keep coming back to MASH. I mean, it was on the air for 10, 11 years, and it's such a cultural icon for so many years that it's got to be on air even to this day somewhere in the world 24/7. So to drop the two of those characters into a situation that is not necessarily family oriented, like you could drop them into a Different Strokes type situation or a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but mix it up a little bit and put them into an ensemble comedy where they have to stand out a little bit, and a little bit of that whole fish out of water type of scenario where they're not just in the kitchen preparing dinner or in the living room serving food to guests as they did in the first episode. They're actually, okay, where are we? And there's bombs going off, and all of a sudden they're thrust into a surgery situation and doctors are cracking jokes at the same time. That would have been interesting to me.
Of course, now that I think about it, and I've heard all of your answers, it occurs to me that there is a show that Disney now holds the rights to since the Fox acquisition that also would have been perfect for this, given the absolute bonkers scenarios that they went through. Why wasn't there an episode that was completely animated in the style of The Simpsons?
Oh,
that's a good thought.
Yeah.
Family-oriented sitcom, and it's owned by Disney.
Just an entirely animated WandaVision episode. Oh man!
And what better show to showcase the citizens of Westview than an animated series that is famous for having hundreds of people living in that little city who all stand out.
Good call.
There's so many Simpsons characters that you can pull in for that. So that would be fun. I'm glad. Thank you, Jalen, for pushing us in that little direction.
Now I really want to see an animated WandaVision episode in the style of the Simpsons. Oh man, you messed up, Disney. You messed it up. But thank you. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Disney overlords, wherever you are. If you can hear me, if you can hear this, I'm sure you can. I'm sure your lawyers can.
Bob Iger's check is in the mail, Jalen.
Okay, good. Thank you, Gary.
So for me, I'm only going to highlight this one little weakness, and it's only about the finale, and it's only because it's something that we like don't really have even a little bit of information about what's going on yet. And that is, I was a little upset that we don't really know what's happening with White Vision. He just kind of vanishes mid-episode. We get post-credit scenes and mid-credit scenes, so we know what's happening with Monica. We know where Wanda's at right now, but where the heck is that White Vision? And when do we think he's going to show up again? We really don't have a hint. I'll get to you in just a second, Gary. And also, what the heck happens? How does this show wrap up for Jimmy and for Darcy? Because this show, I don't think Jimmy Woo's character was ever really in any danger of becoming irrelevant in the MCU. But this show really saved Darcy after Thor: The Dark World, because I really enjoyed her in the first Thor. But Thor: The Dark World, this show proved that they did not know what to do with her in that movie. So I'm glad that she gets to do her own thing away from Jane and away from Thor, and prove that she can stand on her own, and finally use that big brain of hers.
She's a doctor.
Yeah. Gary, you had your hand up. What do you
Because I have a question, because maybe
Okay.
I missed something, and perhaps those that are watching right now missed it too. Yes, we realize it was Agatha all along. Okay, fine. What happens to her? I understand she's locked into Westview. She's been cursed. She has to be the nosy neighbor, but Westview converts to what it was. So is she still dressed up in 1950s Agatha the nosy neighbor? Is she what is she now? We don't know. Or did I miss something?
That's a good question, and that's that. We can talk about that now, but we'll get to other lingering questions later on. But since you brought it up, I have a feeling that she's going to come back in some way or another, because they don't just deliberately leave their villains alive unless they have plans for them to return. Even at this point, after all these years, Abomination is finally going to come back in the She-Hulk series sometime next year. So that door is finally opening again. But so far, every other Marvel villain that has survived, Loki, who else? I mean, technically Bucky was kind of a villain in Winter Soldier.
Vulture didn't die.
Vulture didn't die, and it sounds like they probably have plans for him based on post-credit stuff in Spider-Man: Homecoming.
He's going to be in Morbius.
He is going to be in Morbius if that movie ever releases.
Whenever that comes out.
Yeah. But yeah, so far everyone else, even Justin Hammer showed up in one of the little shorts, and
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised. I would actually like to see Justin Hammer show up again at some point, because he was what made Iron Man 2
Palatable,
unique and good. But yeah, pretty much every other villain that they don't plan on bringing back, they'll kill off. Except Thanos, who gets the chance to die twice. So
in
yeah,
the same movie too. Oh, Avengers Endgame spoiler. Sorry. for the one person listening to this that hasn't seen that.
I know it's been 2 years since Endgame, but actually it really only feels like one. So yeah, I have a feeling. I don't know how they're going to bring her back or when, but I have a feeling because she got the opportunity to survive, that she will find her way back.
It seemed like her going back to, because allegedly Elizabeth Olsen's next appearance in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is in Doctor Strange 2, or Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. But it seems like her endgame in the final episode was to collect all the magic, not necessarily for herself, but it looked like she was kind of on the same quest that Baron Mordor was at the end of Doctor Strange, where she was trying to put an end to, where they're both trying to put an end to unauthorized users of magic. So I have a feeling if anyone's going to get Agatha out of that where whatever prison that she's currently in right now, it'll be Mordor who gets her out. And I have a feeling, if I had to take a guess, I wouldn't be surprised if those two start working together, which would be awesome.
That would be interesting to see, but I don't know though, because Agatha's goal seems to be to acquire all magic, and Mordo's goal seems to be to destroy all magic. So maybe those two will end up facing off, and Doctor Strange and Wanda will have to pick a side. We'll see.
Yeah.
That could be an interesting twist.
Yeah.
So I would say we've kind of answered this question, but to get in a little more in depth with this one. So this is Marvel Studios, and I'm not talking about Marvel Television at this point. We're leaving out Netflix, we're leaving out S.H.I.E.L.D. This is Marvel Studios proper, their first attempt to bring the MCU to television. Did they succeed in transitioning from the big screen to a small screen? Do you feel like anything was left behind that this necessarily maybe had to be seen on a big screen? Sarah, let's go your way first.
I don't really feel like it left anything out. Honestly, I mean, other than, I didn't have the huge screen and the popcorn maybe, but like I didn't feel like it felt to me just like watching a mini. I mean, actually, it was kind of nice, like Gary said earlier, to have the little short episodes, because it was really easy to get in. Like for people with kids, it was really easy to get in an episode after your kid goes to bed. So that was, whereas like trying to block out the 3 hours to go see Endgame and have someone watch your kid is a lot harder. I mean, I did it, but it was a lot harder. So, and I mean, especially once they started doing the end credit scenes, it definitely felt like regular old Marvel to me.
Regular old Marvel.
Regular old Marvel.
Gary, what say you out of this?
I thought it was a raging success from the get-go, but the deeper into the series you got, the closer it got to the cinematic look and feel of an actual Marvel film that you would see on the big screen. In particular, the last 3 episodes, I think you started to really blur the line between what is cinematic and what is television. Especially, they made excellent use of film footage in the episodes themselves, making quick flashback references to killing Thanos and the Mind Stone being ripped out of Vision's head, if you will. That really blurred the line. And also what blurred the line is COVID itself. Hear me out. We have taken cinema and we've brought it home. In the interim between 2008, when Iron Man came out, and 2 days ago when WandaVision's finale aired, haha, it's streaming. Isn't that funny? We have made our televisions bigger. The prices have fallen. The technology is such that our screens are thinner, and so we can put these massive screens even in smaller spaces. So we've effectively replicated some of the cinematic experience at home. I think it would be naive to say that Marvel Studios didn't know that. They brought the cinema experience into the home as best they can under the guise of it being a television series. Witness in the series itself that they would use the Academy ratio for the sitcom scenes. And then the screen would widen when they were trying to affect a cinematic look. This was all very purposeful and intentional. So did they actually succeed in bringing the MCU? I would say they not only succeeded, they did it with intent.
And Jalen, what say you?
Oh, unlike other shows that were allegedly set in the Marvel universe, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the shows on Netflix, this actually did feel like part of the universe. And for all of the reasons that Gary said, like, this looked like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Those Netflix shows didn't really. And Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. also kind of really didn't. But this felt connected. This is the one that actually felt like, I really felt like this one was a part of that universe. because they really did, as Gary said, they really did make the conscious effort to make it look like, I could pop in a Blu-ray of a Marvel film, or pull it up on Disney Plus and then pull up WandaVision, and it'll look exactly the same. They didn't skimp for this show, which I appreciated. And also having actual Avengers as the star of this show, and not not to say anything bad about Agent Coulson. I love Agent Coulson, but Agent Coulson isn't necessarily an Avenger. He's a side character. Having shows starring characters that we haven't seen start out in, because Daredevil didn't start out and he didn't make an appearance in a movie. Jessica Jones didn't make an appearance in a movie. We're asking us to accept that these characters that we've never seen before are also part of this universe. So having this star characters that we've seen in the filmatic universe lead this, I think helps a great deal as well.
Yeah, not just Wanda and Vision, but like we've already mentioned, bringing in Jimmy Woo and Darcy and a grown-up Monica Rambeau, and to see that the events of WandaVision are leading in not only to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, but also to either Captain Marvel 2 or Secret Invasion, whichever adventure Monica goes on first. We get to see that, and fingers crossed, we may be getting a Jimmy Woo X-Files series spinoff out of this, which would be just delightful. Randall Park has been an absolute comedic blessing in a universe that already is full of wonderful comedic performances. So yeah, and you're absolutely right. And I'm going to kind of jump ahead, since you brought up the Netflix and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff, to we'll talk about how it compares to that, because we all know that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. started trying to be the show that tied a lot of things together. But the unfortunate truth is there's this not so great history between Marvel Studios and Marvel Television that kind of ultimately falls on the shoulders of a man named Ike Perlmutter, who used to be in charge of Marvel. And thankfully, Disney had the smarts to kick him out of Marvel Studios and leave him in charge of the television department and promote Kevin Feige all the way up to the top there. Because if they hadn't, we probably wouldn't have Black Panther and Captain Marvel, because, as I've said on this show before, Ike Perlmutter was a terrible, terrible person. And thankfully now, Marvel Television, and props to Jeff Loeb and the good folks at Marvel Television for trying to deliver some really good stuff there for as long as they could, and keeping stuff like S.H.I.E.L.D. interesting by bringing like Ghost Rider in season 4.
Oh God!
And
season 4.
S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm not saying S.H.I.E.L.D. was a disaster, and the Netflix shows were a disaster, except maybe Iron Fist. But you're all absolutely right. It's like because Marvel Television and Marvel Studios were separate, Marvel Television did all they can to sort of keep them separate, which sucked for so long, because there were the occasional references in Jessica Jones to, the events of Avengers. And I didn't catch all of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I remember at the end of season 5, they said, hey, there's this alien coming to Earth. His name is Thanos. And I was like, oh, cool. So we're going to get the snap in S.H.I.E.L.D. And it's like, and the snap never really happened in S.H.I.E.L.D. So it was really frustrating that these were supposed to be all tied together, and it never was.
I will jump in and say that one that did pull it off was the unfortunately all too brief Agent Carter, which I think set up her character exceptionally well for what we see as the coda of Endgame. If we didn't have that series, and I would add that the layering of her character, the depth of her character that was in those 2 seasons is why there's such a payoff for those that did stick it out and watch those 2 very well-crafted seasons of episodes. We care a lot about her, even though she doesn't have a prominent role in either the penultimate or ultimate film that closes out that phase. I really had legitimate tears when the 2 of them reunited in her era, because I had seen that series. So I think that would be the lone exception in my opinion.
Gary, you're absolutely right. And I had unfortunately forgotten about that series, primarily because it was kind of stuck with that 2-season arc before it was very unceremoniously canceled, with a major cliffhanger at that, that we're probably never ever going to see resolved. Agent Carter is the one show between all of Netflix, ABC, and everything that does feel it's tied back enough to the films. And not just because of her, but it was also fun. And I think I don't remember which season, but they brought back Dum Dum Dugan, and that was really fun for an episode. You're absolutely right. But those Netflix shows, as good as they were, you were talking Daredevil and Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, as good as those shows were, they just they didn't tie in, and it's also a shame that it's going to be really hard to bring those characters in, because they are the street level Marvel heroes. They are the ones who we love because their punches hit harder and they bleed. And we want to see them do that, because these aren't the characters who are, except for maybe Luke Cage, absolutely overpowered. And of course, we can't forget Runaways and Cloak and Dagger, which were on Hulu and then I believe Freeform, respectively, which I never even got into, because those were shows that were geared towards the CW audience, the preteens, and the young high school kids. And not to say that young high school kids aren't getting into the real Marvel stuff, but those were really driven towards that. So I don't even know what went on in those. And then of course there was Inhumans, which, that's another one I think we want to talk about even less than Iron Fist.
No. That show is so awful.
I caught the first 2 episodes in the theater. They actually showed them like that, and it was wildly unfortunate. Sarah, I know you're a fan of some of these Netflix shows. How do you feel that Marvel Studios did compared to what Marvel Television did?
I feel like the Netflix Marvel shows, I feel like they were made not with the intent to tie them into the movies. Other than that it's all Marvel. They went for a very different feel, a very different look. They were much more dark and gritty and adult, with like the violence and the nudity and the sex, and they were like the R-rated Marvel. Whereas like the movies are the PG-13 rated. You're not going to get an R-rated Marvel movie, aside from like something kind of separate from the Avengers phase thing. But I just feel like they were going for like the dark, gritty adult kind of thing, and I don't think they were trying to tie that into the movie. And I did enjoy them a lot, except for Iron Fist. And actually I didn't really care for the Defenders too much, but Luke Cage was awesome, and Daredevil was awesome, and Jessica Jones was awesome, and I enjoyed them a lot. And I'm sad they couldn't keep going, because I think they were a fun separate thing. Like that was when you feel like watching the R-rated Marvel, like it's kind of fun to have like that choice. I feel like I didn't watch a lot of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I started to watch it, and I felt like they were the one that was trying to tie into the movies, but there's something about network TV that sticks out as like network TV.
You mean commercials?
I don't know if that makes sense to anybody here, but it's like, if you take any show that's on a network station versus like any show that's on like Netflix or HBO or Stars, it's just or even like AMC. They just have a network feel to them. I don't even know how to describe it, but there's just something like they're just a little too glossy, like the actors are a little too cutesy, like the dialogue's a little too cutesy, like the little commercial breaks are like, really like fit into the episode, and I don't know, it's just always lacking. I have a very hard time liking network. I have a hard time getting into network shows. Like I usually lose interest with few exceptions, but I think that's why it didn't fit in. It just kind of had that network feel, which the Marvel movies don't have.
And
having what are your thoughts on?
Well, having a kind of piggyback on one of Sarah's points, but Agents of Shield, I also think like for the first 5 years it had like a standard 22 episode count, and I think that hurt it immensely. One of WandaVision's strengths is it's only 9 episodes. We'll see what happens next week, if it's a making of or a random bonus episode. We'll see, probably making of, but I think having that high episode count, I think really hurt Agents of Shield. The majority of what was on Netflix I did enjoy, again, save for Iron Fist, and I really hated the Defenders, but because it was like that's what we were paying, that's what the payoff was, that's what we were waiting for.
The Defenders was like Iron Fist too, like it was way too focused on him.
Yeah, it's like really
about it, and
and then it just turned into, all right, we're fighting the Foot Clan again. I don't even remember what they were called, but they're fighting the Foot Clan again. Yay, we're fighting ninjas. Yay. We're always fighting ninjas. If when those characters do come back in the MCU, if we could bring those actors back, even Iron Fist, if we could bring all those actors back to reprise those roles, that would be great, because I would hate to lose all of them, or I'd hate to lose even one of them. I'd hate to lose, because I think the performances were great. I just don't think that it was. I just wish it could have been, it's like, let's talk about Spider-Man. Let's talk about Captain America. Like, let's name drop something instead of like, oh yeah, it just reminds me of the Battle of New York. And then we're not going to mention anything for the entire rest of the Agent Carter. Gary brought up a very good point about Agent Carter. Like, that was the one that definitely did feel like it tied in. Again, having someone front the show that is as important like Peggy Carter was. And then Agent Carter also had the one thing that transferred from the TV that was introduced in the TV shows to the movies, which was Jarvis's appearance in Avengers Endgame, which was wonderful, which is nice about it. Like, hey, look, it's tied in. So seeing that was great. But I still think that season 4 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., bringing in Ghost Rider, the first appearance of the Darkhold, all of the Agents of Hydra stuff, like that on its own is still probably, next to WandaVision, probably the finest season of a Marvel TV show, because that's what it felt like with the life model decoys and the Agents of, like, it had Ghost Rider, and it had everything. So, and then then the Kree showed up, and I was like, this again. Can't they just have one episode where they just celebrate and then bad stuff can happen? Like, can't they just get a break? Like, man. But yeah.
I like what you say about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. feeling the most, because it felt the most comic booky of everything they've done, because it was willing to take certain risks that I think the movies haven't been willing to take and up until this point. I mean, the first episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had a flying car, which is absolutely something you'd think you'd see in a comic book, but because we're kind of grounded in realism in the movies, a flying car would be a little ridiculous. But I mean, we're about to see the Fantastic Four in the movies, so at that point, flying cars need to be a staple in everything. Gary, you've already talked about Agent Carter. Do you have any thoughts on the rest of Marvel Television's lineup?
I actually hauled out a Martin Scorsese quote because it sort of encapsulates my thoughts on this. He said, "Cinema expresses the complexity of people and their contradictory and sometimes paradoxical natures, the way they can hurt one another and love one another and suddenly come face to face with themselves. That establishes the bar of relatability of the characters in the MCU. We genuinely care about these people. In WandaVision, that sensibility of the characters having to look in the mirror, the metaphorical mirror, and see themselves for who they are, particularly the Scarlet Witch, having to see what she's done. She apologized. What we don't see is the fallout yet. That's yet to come. She realizes what she did, as all of them had to do, all of the leads. Even Vision, in that final scene that just tears your heart out, he asks the salient question, what am I? He is compelled to look in the mirror when faced with his own imminent death. Most of the network TV shows don't go there. They don't either have the gravitas or the script writing chops to be able to get to that level. WandaVision took the risk and it paid off because we really connect with those characters because those characters are ourselves. We're doing the same thing on a daily basis if we're living right. And it's that level of engagement that cinema can bring to us that often is missing with, Sarah, what you pointed out is that glossy veneer, and Jalen, that you brought up, that 23, 24 episode run in a season that tends to dilute that. We got it with WandaVision.
And I think they borrowed. I would argue that they did borrow that from the Netflix series, with the Netflix series only running at most 13 episodes. You can tell a good story, which is what, these seasons are trying to do, is tell a singular good story arc over a couple of episodes, as opposed to, again, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. being a network show. It has to do the Creature of the Week episodes. It's an X-Files show is really what it is. It's not, they're trying to fit in, they may try to fit in a major arc that runs across those 22 episodes and gets a break every now and then, like Hydra taking over in season 1 was a key thing. But yeah, it's just network television. It's going to have, those handful of episodes where they take you out for a week and you're like, well, wait, what?
And
Suddenly
that has its place. I mean, DC is making magic as far as I'm concerned with the animated Harley Quinn. It's freaking awesome. Putting it in
that
PG
show
terms.
So good.
It is good.
Love that show so
and
much.
So I'm saying there's a place for all of that, but WandaVision set the bar really, really high and cleared it easily by being able to connect with an audience. Will you be able to do that with the shenanigans that happen in rated R fashion on an animated Harley Quinn? Probably not, but it's still just as valuable in terms of its entertainment. But it doesn't inspire podcasts like this one to talk about it afterward.
And before we move on, I actually should point out there will be an R-rated MCU film, and it is in fact the only film they have no excuse, because Kevin Feige has said, yes, Deadpool is coming and Deadpool will be rated R. It absolutely has to be. They're at the point of no return with that character. So
time to break out the chimichangas.
Yep. Sadly, with him saying that's going to be the only rated R film, that kind of leaves me to hope, okay, how far are they going to be pushing Blade? Because
there will be no National Women's Day in Blade.
No.
Harry. Anyway, so
thank you. I'll be here all week.
Or Happy Lent. Go Deadpool too.
Anyway, so I already mentioned earlier that that WandaVision was not supposed to be the first entry in Marvel's planned Phase 4. But, things happen and germs spread and the world shuts down, and that affects movies and television, as it turns out. Of course, Black Widow was originally supposed to be the film that opened up Phase 4, followed by The Falcon and the Winter Soldier in either August or September of 2020, and then Eternals in November. And then WandaVision was originally supposed to drop around December of last year. Thankfully, it didn't get delayed much. But COVID-19 did put a massive delay on Falcon and Winter Soldier, and because of cinema closures, we have lost Black Widow and all the films to 1-year delays. So, with that in mind, Black Widow or WandaVision, both could serve as great ways to open up Phase 4, but Jalen, did Marvel benefit from WandaVision being the big opening act for their new phase of features and television?
Yes, absolutely. It shows, one of the things I loved was the beginning of episode 4, where you saw the snap, but from the other side, like people actually come back. The cold open episode 4 with Monica was great. So I think timeline wise, this could even be set before Spider-Man Far From Home. But I think having this start out first was great, especially over Black Widow, which strikes me as more of a, because of the events of Avengers Endgame, again, spoilers, I just keep spoiling that movie, but because of the events of that movie, it's like, oh, it's just the highest grossing movie of all time. Sorry, they throw the jewel in the end of the ocean at the end of Titanic, but unobtainium. But let's spoil everything. But because of Black Widow probably being a flashback movie, I think starting this one off and giving 2 Avengers that haven't quite gotten the focus that maybe that they have deserved, or that maybe that they have been given, which I think Falcon and Winter Soldier have been to kind of have had more of a higher profile in the films than Vision and Scarlet Witch have. So yeah, I think this was a definite, I think giving us this, because of how different it was from everything else at the start, I think helps us kind of open our minds for the possibilities of Phase 4, Phase 5, and further on down the road.
Sarah, how do you feel about WandaVision being the big Phase 4 opener?
I mean, I think it worked as a Phase 4 opener. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where maybe Black Widow would have been a great Phase 4 opening too, but I mean, it would be hard to know until we see it. I guess once we see that movie, I might have a better idea. It felt like, starting it with Black Widow was almost kind of like an epilogue to the last phase, because she's gone now. So like, it was kind of like, okay, we closed this out, but we never gave you your Black Widow movie. So here it is as an epilogue to like Phase 3, and then we'll move on. It's kind of what it felt like to me, knowing that was the first movie. But I think that WandaVision was a great start to Phase 4. So I mean, in that sense, I think it worked fine for them.
And Gary, same question.
Don't think it's pinned to either phase. I think it's a bridge. It's a bridge between Phase 3 and Phase 4 that the Black Widow film can't be, because that takes place after Civil War, but before the events of Infinity War and Endgame. So that feels, like you said, Sarah, like a vestige of Phase 3, but I don't see WandaVision as anything that launches Phase 4. I think what it does do is serve as a epilogue to the relationship between Vision and Wanda, particularly what happens in Wanda's psyche, and that sets up the entrance into Phase 4. What is actually going to feel like the beginning of Phase 4? I'm not sure yet. Perhaps the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because that actually takes place after Endgame and actually establishes a new narrative from the beginning, rather than relying on the events of the past to inform the series of WandaVision. So again, I use that metaphor. It's a bridge between the 2 phases.
All things considered, I do think this worked out very well, and I like the idea, Gary, of a bridge. And because of the flashback nature of Black Widow, it does sort of feel like a pin at the end of Phase 3. The only thing that I think we might get out of Black Widow that is going to drive anything forward is whether or not Florence Pugh's Yelena Belova, the new Black Widow, is going to be confirmed to sort of carry the torch, which I think if that is not yet a known quantity, but if that's something we knew, I think that Black Widow might have been a better way to start off the phase, to sort of give us that sense that someone is carrying the torch forward for those who have passed. But I do think that WandaVision coming before Falcon and Winter Soldier, I think they benefit in that sense, because I think Gary is right. Falcon and Winter Soldier is going to start a new narrative that it is going to have to depend on knowledge from the past. We are getting Zemo is returning as the primary antagonist, so I have a feeling that Falcon and Winter Soldier is going to cover ground that we're familiar with. So in that sense, I think WandaVision is a good starting point for Phase 4, because again, it sets completely different expectations for what we might be seeing later on, whereas Falcon and Winter Soldier is, from the trailers that I've seen so far, basically says, here is a lot of what you've seen before, but we know you love it. We know you love Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan, so here's more of them. And I do think that actually both sets of characters deserve their time in the spotlight. So I'm really glad that, especially Anthony Mackie, now that we know he has the shield, I'm going to be really excited to see if he has a suit at the end of this series, and if we have maybe a new team leader coming up. That'll be fun. So one of the fun things about WandaVision being episodic is that after every episode, we're all wondering what's going to happen next. And this, of course, led to some pretty crazy fan theories and some pretty high expectations as to what was going to happen. Just talking with coworkers after every episode, we would definitely hype each other up and say, oh, what if this happens and what if this happens? And then we'd have to say, okay, but probably not. We're probably going to be happy with whatever happens. And we were. But, how did you, Jalen, temper those expectations based on any crazy theories that either you came up with or you heard around the old internet?
Well, I always kind of figured something had to be up with Catherine Hahn's character, because she was always so featured so prominently on the promotional material, and she got an and in the in the credits, and then they say the names. So I always suspected that there was something up with her, whether or not she was going to be Agatha Harkness as my roommate supposed, or if she was going to turn out to be Mephisto. But I always kind of assumed that there was going to be something with hers. It was exciting. WandaVision, it just got to the point where you just spent, especially after Evan Peters showed up, where you just spent all week just speculating. It's like, oh my God, we're gonna see Magneto and Xavier? Are they outside the Hex? Are they kind of watching all this? Is it gonna be Ian McKellen? Is it gonna be Michael Fassbender? Is it gonna be somebody completely different? Is Christoph Waltz gonna show up as new Magneto? It was fun to speculate all of this, to spend a whole week just oh my God, what's going on? Peak TV, they managed to bring Peak TV back, which is something I wasn't ever expecting them to do after Game of Thrones left a couple of years ago. I never thought we were going to get to that point again. And sure enough, Disney Plus, because of that weekly release schedule, now we're just spending a whole week wondering if Reed Richards is going to show up as the aerospace engineer, or is Mephisto or Nightmare or Nick Fury or Patrick Stewart going to show up. It was great. It was great. It was so much fun to speculate about a show again.
Gary, what crazy theories did you come up with in your household?
We pinned our our hopes and our theories on a line from the show that Agatha says. She says, your power exceeds that of the Sorcerer Supreme. It's your destiny to destroy the world. That's the new arc. We're not going to see any payoffs until the second Doctor Strange film. This is where her destiny is going. When she's astral projecting and simultaneously doing other things in her house, it is implied that it is a very short interval between when she gets her brand new shiny red costume and when we see her in her home multitasking in the universe as only the Scarlet Witch can. That fueled all kinds of, okay, where is this going? Where is the blend between Scarlet Witch and the Avengers versus what her potential is? And so we just kept postulating endlessly about what's going to happen to this person. Can she become evil because she becomes so overwhelmed by what she is absorbing, the material in this book? And I don't think those questions are going to be answered until we see her in the next Doctor Strange and how that can be channeled. So is she going to be an anti-hero? Is that even a possibility? If not an outright villain, but someone who is conflicted because of the knowledge that in this very brief snippet of film at the tail end of WandaVision, that we see this potential. So our crazy theories, at least for me, is that she's going to have an ethical argument with herself. Once she resolves that internal conflict of Vision's death and how she could manifest Vision again, or is he going to manifest? He is her grounding influence. How off the rails could she go with the power of this book, of the Darkhold?
I love that you brought up that post-credit scene because it actually mirrors a scene in a film that I'm sure most Marvel fans have only seen once, and that is Ed Norton's The Incredible Hulk. At the end of that film, he is seen in a cabin up in the mountains training himself. And that was the first thing I thought when I saw that cabin was, oh my gosh, she's pulling a Bruce Banner. She's training herself. And when it was kind of a letdown at first to see her just sitting there on the porch drinking her coffee. But then, as the camera pans down that hallway and turns that corner, it's like, oh, nope, she already has figured out how to astral project. And that says a lot about how far she's already come, from the point we hit the credits. But I'll talk about my theories later. Sarah, what crazy did you and Dustin come up with some absolute bonkers theories throughout the course of this show?
I feel like we pretty much kind of guessed something along the lines of in the first few episodes that she was like creating the world, and that it had that somehow she was like manipulating everything. I definitely thought there would be more to like the casting of Pietro than there was. I think I was wondering if it was going to be some like specific reason they picked him that was going to like tie into the X-Men, but I'm trying to think. I think we I don't know. I definitely do really like that Disney chose to do the one episode every week. As fun as it can be to have a whole, series drop that you can binge, I think it is a lot more fun to have to wait and think about like what's going to happen the next week. Actually, I thought it was kind of fun to just try to guess what they were going to do like for the next like decade sitcom. Like, is it going to be modeled after Full House, or is it going to feel like
that's like which 80s show are they going to do? Are they going to do Family Ties? Are they going to go Cheers? Are they going to go St. Elsewhere? Like, where are they going to go?
Yeah, I definitely have some very interesting thoughts about like looking forward about in like the end credit scenes. I don't know if we're talking about that yet, but
by all means, go ahead.
Yeah, I just I thought it was my big question is like, you heard her kids' voices. Like, are her kids like trapped in her mind? Or are they like trapped in other dimensions? Because she created these children and clearly they weren't uncreated. They're somewhere. So that I think that's like Like where are the kids?
Yeah, and there's a history of them in the comics, but I'm not going to dive into that because it's ludicrously complex, and I haven't even read that storyline. And it does have to do with characters that could pop up in Doctor Strange. I'll just say that. So my big well, speaking of Full House, I also think it is ridiculously funny that during the course of this show, all over social media, people were starting to realize, wait, she's related to the Olsen twins?
Oh,
That's why it would have been perfect for them for Full House.
So I thought that was one of the funniest things that was going on while this show was streaming. And then Jalen, speaking of, I forgot to mention this, other films in Elizabeth Olsen's career. A year before Age of Ultron, she actually was co-starred with Aaron Johnson in Godzilla, and they played husband and wife.
Yes, that's right. She was in that. Yes.
And
I enjoyed that movie.
They said that that experience in Godzilla was perfect. It allowed them to bond, and they had a much better working relationship playing brother and sister together on Ultron. So I thought that was cool. So my crazy theories, most of my crazy theories were before Pietro showed up, because we knew that there was going to be, some big, they said it's going to be a Mark Hamill and Mandalorian level, cameo. And I honestly don't think we ever got that, but it meant that at work we got to throw all kinds of crazy stuff around, and just for kicks, I knew it was not going to happen. I honestly thought maybe we'll get Benedict Cumberbatch in the last episode, just because they are deliberately trying to tie this into Doctor Strange. But what if a portal opens up, because we're supposed to be getting multiverse stuff going on now. What if it opens up and the first two people to come through are frickin' Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds? And that's their way of saying, welcome X-Men. It's like, oh my God, that would be that. Cause to me, that is the Mark Hamill level of cameo that I said, I think I tweeted,
Or
like,
if
that's the only thing that you can get as bigger than Mark Hamill is Hugh Jackman coming back to Marvel. So yeah.
I'd say potentially almost as big would have been if it was Edward Norton and Terrence Howard coming out of that portal.
Oh no.
It's like, oh boy. Oh, we're all playing nice now.
How much would they have had to pay them to do that?
Yeah.
That's that's it. That's people are just going to start using the multiverse to explain away every recasting decision and every flaw in the movies from here on out. It's like, that wasn't supposed to happen. That's a continuity error in Iron Man 2. It's like, oh no, it's just a multiverse thing. That's what it's going to be from here on out.
Yep.
So speaking of episodic anticipation, peak TV, as Sarah said. Do you think WandaVision hit peak TV more so than Disney Plus's other hit series, The Mandalorian? And why or why not? Sarah, let's go to you first.
I would say I think it hit well. I feel like it kind of maybe did hit peak TV a little. I mean, The Mandalorian was really popular and I loved it and it was super fun. I don't know that I theorized about The Mandalorian a lot. I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I was more kind of along for the ride with The Mandalorian. Whereas something about Marvel and just the mysteriousness of it makes you kind of want to whoa, what was that? I don't know if that, yeah. I just feel like Marvel's kind of known more for big surprises and big twists and kind of crazy things happening. I feel like then Star Wars is pretty they're usually pretty steady, hero's journey type stories, I feel like, in Star Wars. So it's not that it's like not that it's not unexpected, but not that unexpected things don't happen, but I feel like that's not like their focus is like the big twist.
I feel like Mandalorian is the first bit of Star Wars to introduce that sort of Marvel flair to it, with the whole idea of a post-credit scene like we finally got at the end of Mandalorian season 2. And just the fact that Mandalorian, we know what comes after Mandalorian. It's called Star Wars Episode 7. You know, we don't have decades worth of. I mean, yes, we've gotten some teases like Grand Admiral Thrawn is coming at some point, that kind of stuff. But Marvel has been teasing us for years. So you make a very good point there, Gary.
I think that The Mandalorian and WandaVision achieved both of their objectives because of Disney's decision to make them episodic and a limited series. Yes, we'll get a second go at The Mandalorian. There's lots and lots of stories to tell, which we will not get with WandaVision. But because of the format, and Ben, it was what you said earlier, you talked to your colleagues at work and you built and built and built anticipation for the next episode to come, which made that last over the course of 8, 9, 10, 12 weeks, as opposed to just a sudden drop of all of these episodes. You get this initial blast of enthusiasm, and then it fairly quickly dies away. How many people are actually talking week after week about The Crown? They're not. They just aren't. Is it highly revered? According to the Golden Globes, very much so. I think, and very well deservedly so. I think Olivia Colman is absolutely brilliant. Helena Bonham Carter is this shining beacon. She's a masterclass of acting in that series. You can't say the same thing about The Mandalorian or WandaVision, although a nod for Elizabeth Olsen would not be ill-received as far as I'm concerned. I think she deserves a nod for her performance, particularly in that last episode. It was just really dynamic. It just checked all the boxes. But because of the episodic nature, it actually benefit both shows dramatically because of the anticipation it built week over week, as well as building an audience, because the stakes for both of those shows kept getting higher and higher with each succeeding episode. And you just can't wait to get to that last bit. And then the lingering after effects after the finale happens, again, I would say that we will probably have conversations about The Mandalorian until the next season drops. And we will continue to talk about WandaVision until Doctor Strange comes out, when she makes her real palpable next appearance. You can't really say that about shows that just binge, drop, done. You can with these because they're continuing to build their audience over time. So there's more similarities between those shows rather than differences that I see.
On that note, Gary, could you all just imagine how much bigger Stranger Things might be if it had been a weekly show?
Mm-hmm.
I think that would really benefit Stranger Things.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a similar genre in the sense that it just builds each episode on itself with the stakes and continuing to get higher and higher. That's a very apt description of exactly what I'm talking about.
Jalen, what are your thoughts on anticipation levels between WandaVision and Mandalorian?
I think it really kind of also all depends on how big of a Star Wars fan you are and how big of a Marvel fan you are, because a lot of the stuff that people got excited for in Mandalorian, Ahsoka Tano, for example, like a lot of the stuff that you'd get excited for in The Mandalorian is a lot of stuff that you would get excited for if you've seen, all the Clone Wars shows and all the animated series. The stuff that got me excited in The Mandalorian was the stuff that, that the Boba Fett stuff. It was like, oh, he's back, yay. And then obviously Luke Skywalker's last 10 minutes, the best thing that happened in 2020 was the last 10 minutes of the last episode of The Mandalorian. But that got me excited because that was from the movies. That was stuff I was familiar with. I think WandaVision just in my opinion, was a little bit more successful because I'm a bit more well versed in it than I am Star Wars. So I think the successful level, the level of success depends on how familiar you are with both fan bases. Because there's with the MCU, you just really have to see the movies. With the Star Wars, you have to see, you have to have familiarity with all of those. You have to watch all 250 episodes of the Clone Wars, and see all of this and all of that, and it's a lot to digest in order to really truly just when Ahsoka Tano shows up. I mean, I got excited, but that was more just because it's Rosario Dawson than anything else. But
my final note on this subject, because I agree with everything y'all have said, is that we have entered an era where Marvel currently is the new Star Wars. The Mandalorian is digging Star Wars out of a hole it's been stuck in for a long time, and finally making it seem super relevant again. Not to say, that the prequel trilogy is all bad, but Rogue One is, of course, one of the best Star Wars films ever. But since the Disney acquisition, it feels like this is the Mandalorian feels like the first thing that really is striking a chord with every Star Wars fan and really starting to rally Star Wars fans again all together for the first time in a long time. Whereas Marvel fans are still running off of a 10+ year high that's not going anywhere. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I have a fun little analogy to make here about, and we've talked about this, about episodic television versus a giant streaming dump that we get with Netflix, that comic book fans, I think, will appreciate, because if you are the type of person who is frustrated about having to wait a week in between episodes, well, my friends, this is what comic book fans have had to deal with for years. This is, bad glare. This is issue 1 of Civil War. Issue number 1 of 7. A single issue in a series of comic books is released monthly. So to get the story of Civil War, we had to wait 7 whole months. So by comparison, having to wait only 9 weeks to get the entire story of WandaVision, or really 8 weeks since we got a 2-episode premiere, isn't all that bad. And what you get out of WandaVision or one of the movies is a compilation like this. And that's great. That's sort of what a compilation or a graphic novel is the equivalent of, is the movie. And then you have, and you're going to laugh at this one, I know, then you have this, which is Marvel's Essential Godzilla. This is 28 issues. I would consider this thick beast here the equivalent to a phase. So that's my hilarious and silly analogy. And that is why you all need to just stop whining about having to wait a week in between episodes. Because if you're reading this stuff, it can take forever to get to the end of that really awesome story that you're diving into. And also, it's so much more expensive. So, buzz off, everybody.
Clearly, y'all
Not
didn't
yet.
grow
Wait
up
till
in
the
the
end of the show.
80s when you were watching an episode a week, and then it would get preempted because the Oscars were on or something, and you'd have to wait.
oh yeah, or if there was a football game that ran long.
Yeah, exactly.
But the option exists. You want to binge it? Wait until the finale and then sit down and watch the whole thing. I mean, come on. It's possible.
And stay
We
off
just-
the internet slowly.
We're a
don't go on
culture
the
of
internet.
instant gratification. We want it, and we want it now.
Also, like a show like WandaVision, you could easily binge it in a day. It's only about 6 hours. You'd have to clear your time for that day. But yeah, it's 6 hours compared to, sitting down to binge the entirety of one season of S.H.I.E.L.D. would be a nightmare.
Oh. And depending on the season, also a nightmare.
True.
But
Yeah, what are
And
your
hey, look
tips,
at that.
Jalen, for getting through season 1?
Skip to season 4. Just skip to season 4.
Yeah.
Know that one of them turns bad because he's actually a Hydra agent, but then they kind of give him a nice little redemption arc in season 4. Just skip to season 4. That's where all the good stuff happens.
Season 4 is of the 5 seasons I caught, it's the best one, for sure.
Mhm.
Hey, look at that. We circled all the way back around to a question we've already answered. Isn't that awesome? But hey, here we are. Speaking of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., hey, guess what? Jalen already pointed out the Darkhold first showed up in the MCU, if you want to call S.H.I.E.L.D. the MCU once again, in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It led to a storyline with the Ghost Rider. It's how we got ridiculously super smart and super dangerous life model decoys that ended up trapping the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in, hey, guess what? It's kind of funny. They ended up getting trapped in an alternate reality. Of course, this one was all inside a computer. But it's still kind of a eerily similar storyline where they're trapped in a seemingly, well, I won't say happy world. It's a world where Hydra won World War II. But Jalen, I think it sounds like you're the only one who has caught up on S.H.I.E.L.D., at least to that point. Do you think this is going to open that doorway for the Ghost Rider to come back now that because that was actually a point when they got to the end of episode 7, people were like, we saw the book, but we didn't know what it was yet. So we were all asking, is it the Darkhold? Are we connecting all the way back to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Are we going to get the Ghost Rider? Because they canceled Ghost Rider on Hulu. He was going to get his own show. And
was it going to be that Ghost Rider? Was it going to be?
Yeah, it was going to be Robbie Reyes.
Robbie Reyes. He's a good actor. That Ghost Rider. And we got 2 Ghost Riders because we got the little Johnny Blaze cameo when he switches, when he to use a Doctor Who term, when he regenerates into a different Ghost Rider.
Yep.
Or transfer power. How, I don't know how all that works. The Darkhold was the big cameo we got in the final episode. In my estimation, like that was we did get a big cameo. It was just a book, but a book that could lead to the appearance of maybe Nightmare or the appearance of Mephisto down the line. Or Ghost Rider. I would love to see Ghost Rider come back if the book could make Ghost Rider come back. If Robbie Reyes, especially if that same actor could come back and reprise Ghost Rider, because he was phenomenal and great in Terminator Dark Fate as well. Good movie. But if that could lead to, if it does end up, like if we do end up tying the Agents of the S.H.I.E.L.D. world in, like if Fitz and Simmons end up working for Jimmy Woo as part of Agents of Atlas or whatever it ends up being, if that show even gets made, I know there's been a pitch, we'll see. But if that does happen, great. If not, which I will be surprised if they do end up tying Agents, like if now is the time to bring in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., as opposed to, how come they all just could have been on the helicarrier in Ages of Ultron or Age of Ultron. But yeah, I'll be very surprised if they do bring him back, but I'll also welcome it if they do. But yeah, that was the big cameo we got in episode 9. I was hoping for a Wong cameo. If Wong could show up and be like, hey, or, looks at Agatha, it's like, hey, baby, how's it going? Like, and if they like dated like 20 years ago, like, that was a cameo I was hoping for, and that last one was Wong, because I love Wong, strongest Avenger. But yeah, but we'll see if the Darkhold has a Darkhold.
I agree. I think it'd be fun if that is what ultimately finds a way to tie in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. universe, but I think we're also a little bit late to do that. The time has come and gone. So I honestly think that it's kind of a retcon for the Darkhold, and it's probably been in the MCU as we know it now in Agatha's possession for a very long time. But it could be a great way to introduce a character like Ghost Rider, and even if they have to start his story over, You're absolutely right. Bring back the actor. One of my favorite Ghost Rider Easter eggs from the end of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was when he uses his chain as a sling ring and creates the portal, just like Doctor Strange.
Oh yeah,
that was actually a really good tie-in right there, because Ghost Rider is just as magical, and as Doctor Strange has put it, the spirit of vengeance, when not bound to a host, is the most powerful being in the Marvel universe. And I think that would be, I don't know, Doctor Strange, Ghost Rider, Scarlet Witch team up.
And Wong.
And Wong.
Can't forget Wong. Can't forget Wong.
And he's got to bring his Hulka burning fudge.
Yeah. Yeah. Hulka burning fudge. That's a thing? Yeah, you've been gone for a while, Bruce, but
Yep.
It's a little chalky.
Yeah. All right, moving
I won't
on.
like that ice cream if it gets angry.
We've talked about nostalgia, and oh my gosh, what a crazy sad coincidence that Wanda is using her nostalgia for these classic sitcoms as a coping mechanism. All the while, this last year, one of the things that we have all sort of relied on is those Netflix subscriptions and going back to the familiar to keep us comfortable. I can't tell you how many times I have binged Community in the last year, and how grateful I was when Netflix was able to get Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra back onto their service and go through those again. What a year it has been. You know, has anyone else has anyone else gone on that kind of binge, that familiar binge to keep yourself comfortable this year?
I've actually reread like some books I read when I was like, I reread some of my favorite like Fear Street books from when I was a teenager. It was kind of weird. I've also been listening to a lot of 90s stations on Pandora, listening to a lot of 90s music.
I circled back around and I watched all 8 seasons of Game of Thrones. Granted, I fast forwarded to all the nudie bits, but I did actually get through all. No, I'm kidding.
Some really good ones in the first season, especially.
I'm kidding. No, but I did do that, and for those very reasons, Ben. It was okay. I know that there's some subtlety, some details that, or even performances that I could appreciate better upon a second viewing, as opposed to just trying to keep up. And so I found it much more enjoyable the second time because I had a lot of the pieces in place. And I could enjoy the detail, the cinematography and the sound design and a lot of the other details that I missed the first go. And it was a better experience because I was watching it in 4K, and that made it a little bit new in the sense that I was watching it in a format that was better than the original 1080p in which I did the first go. Almost inconsequential, because what really was fantastic is when I got to the end of it, I felt a sense of satisfaction because yes, I did understand how the story evolved and ended. But this time it felt like I was getting the entire meal as opposed to just picking a little bit here and a little bit there. I was getting the whole palette of colors and all of the tastes and flavors and smells of the show because it was a second viewing of a really good show. And I felt somehow strangely comforted by that, comforted by knowing what was coming and being able to enjoy the anticipation of knowing what was going to happen, but then watching it play out.
Did you rewatch the Red Wedding or did you skip it?
No, I watched the whole thing.
I don't know if I could rewatch that episode.
It was great. In fact, wow, look at the way that blood spurts in 4K. That's amazing.
Man, I was like dreading that episode, having read the book. I was like dreading it.
And thank you to everyone who is on this and who is listening, who read those books and kept their mouths shut. We really appreciate it. Thank you. I have no idea how hard that was for you to keep that quiet, as along with the events of the ending of the 5th book. Again, thank you for keeping those quiet as well.
It was actually, the Red Wedding was worse than the show than it was in the book.
It was worse.
Because
It was worse
in the
than
book,
show.
his wife wasn't there. He left her home
Or-
like a normal, sane person would have done in that situation.
Or how about Pedro Pascal's extraordinary death at the hands of the mountain?
Oh
He was like one
man!
of the best castings in that whole show.
Yeah,
Oh, he's one of the
He-
best
he was
performances on that
perfect.
show.
yes, he is.
He
He's
was
just a
perfect because the
laugh.
rest of his storyline after he died completely sucked compared to the books, but he was perfect.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on the podcast of Thrones.
Podcast of Thrones,
Apparently, we need to do a late Game of Thrones episode.
or a Pedro Pascal appreciation.
Ah, there we go.
There we go. Yeah.
Appreciation.
But you know the
Hmm.
reality, Ben, just to kind of harken back to the seriousness of the original question, I have several things that are in my library that are purposefully left out when I need something that provides comfort. So right now, the box set of Lost is available, and I'm keeping track of where I left off, because if I am having a really crummy day and I just feel lost or overwhelmed, or I actually deal with the public, God help me, I'll retreat. And for an hour, I can immerse myself in a story that I know how it progresses, but I'm entertained by the familiarity. And more importantly, I'm comforted by it. We need that as a coping mechanism. I don't think that's unhealthy.
That was a good show.
Well, now that
too.
we've. Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, I was just gonna say Lost. That was a good show too.
That first season is perfect.
It is perfect.
It's a perfect, like that first season of Lost. Like, there's no other. Sorry, WandaVision, but there's no other series that is just like, whew. I watched like 15 episodes of that in one day
Mhm.
because I made the mistake of watching the John Locke flashback episode. And at the very end of that third episode, they wheel him out in the wheelchair, and suddenly you have to watch the remainder of season one that day because. So
My roommate in 2010, like just a handful of months before the final season aired, said, Ben, you need to watch this before the final season starts. And I did it. I watched all 5 seasons of Lost like
Wow.
maybe 3 months before, because I'm insane. I
Now
also didn't have
that's
a
a
job.
show I feel like really benefits from like a dumping of episodes. I feel like it's a hard show to watch episodically. You benefit that show, I think, from watching like a bunch of episodes at once.
Lost.
Otherwise, you kind of
Yeah.
forget what was like happening.
Oh, it's so dense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I know that's kind of off topic, but it's such a dense program. And these shows that are dense like that, where you go, oh God, this recap is not enough. Yeah, that's when a binge watch is really of value, because you're not forgetting anything. You're just moving on to the next episode.
And one of the few network shows that I do love that doesn't apply to my network monologue from earlier.
Agreed.
And thankfully
Definitely.
we didn't have that problem with WandaVision, because as we pointed out, it's only 9 episodes long and they're all under an hour. So it's really easy to keep track of where you're at with WandaVision. Speaking of WandaVision, a show that we have been talking about a lot tonight,
I wonder
for
why.
those of you who may have gotten lost and thought that we're talking about
Sorry.
Lost,
or Game of
Game
we
of
are,
Thrones.
Thrones.
now the
Or
podcast
Avengers
of
Endgame.
Thrones and J.J. Abrams show.
And
And
Pedro
now we're going to
Pascal.
talk about season 3 of Westworld. No.
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 Okay.
No.
I'm going to snap, and you're all going to disappear if you don't get back on track. Now this is one of the questions that I added after I sent y'all the itinerary, but we've kind of gone over it a little bit. How does WandaVision use the tropes of the sitcoms to which he's paying homage to? And Gary, and I was going to ask this, but Gary's already pointed out very well, how does it play with aspect ratios? Because it does so in the most brilliant ways. Gary, I'm going to set you loose on this one, since you already kind of covered a little bit of it earlier.
Well, it uses it to great effect. I mean, black and white or grayscale and the bright technical. Let's dive into the technical aspects a little bit. When you're looking at the black and white episodes, if you compare the silver nitrite of film stock from back in the day, It's not as though that they took the photography, the film photography, converted it to grayscale, and they were done with it. They really took great pains with both in terms of the practical costuming and set production design to ensure that what they shot actually played as though it was an episode of Dick Van Dyke. If you look at the color saturation and the hues, even in grayscale, and do a side by side. In fact, I would say if you want to stick within WandaVision, look at the clips of Dick Van Dyke that are shown when we are introduced to Wanda and her brother as children, and we see little clips of Dick Van Dyke in the Walnut episode, and then go back to the first episode and watch how that was shot. The color matching, the way the color corrections were done is almost identical. And it was the devil being in the details, and they addressed that right away. Same thing holds true when they go to color, but they're in the 60s or the 70s when it's Brady Bunch. It's oversaturated. The film, if you look at the shots of the Brady Bunch like episodes, you can actually see the film grain. Yes, I know that's all added digitally, but they paid attention enough to the film stock that was what they shot on for the Brady Bunch or other shows like the Partridge Family that were of that era, and they aped the look down to that level of detail. Then the aspect ratios on top of that. So you would see a square screen for the Brady Bunch and the Dick Van Dyke, and then when they went into our world, the screen would stretch, and it would actually not even fill your screen on a 16:9 set. You would still have the black bars at the top and the black bar at the bottom, which informed that it was a cinema aspect ratio of 2.35 to 1. That's how you know where you are. That's another reason why it feels so cinematic, is because it is. It was shot in an aspect ratio that you would see in a theater. So you know where you are in an instant because of the way the film frame looks. It was brilliant.
And I appreciate that they kept those cinematic ratios for the scenes where we're still in Wanda's universe, but it's not being broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
For those brief moments, like for instance, the scene that she deletes, where she's talking to Vision about what happened to Geraldine, and she sees a vision of dead Vision, which is also just a wonderful, creepy scene.
Oh yeah, zombie Vision.
But the television screen itself becomes kind of an ad hoc character because it informs us where we are. We as the audience are oriented instantly by what we see and how it's being presented on the screen.
Gary, you covered that so well. We're just going to jump right into the next topic, which is, and you don't have to answer all of these questions. Really, this is just what lingering questions do you have? You know, now that it's all done, what lingering questions do you have about this show? Sarah, I'm going to jump right to you first.
Well, I talked about one, which is what happened to the kids, where they seem to be existing somewhere, as it showed in the final post-credit scene. My other question is what somebody mentioned earlier. What happened to White Vision? where did he go? I feel like we'll see him again. Also, or in general, how are Wanda and Vision going to come together again at some point? Because they clearly set it up that somehow they will find each other again. And then, what's going to happen with Agatha moving forward? Because clearly, I mean, Wanda said, she said, well, you're going to need me or something to figure out, this. And she was like, well, I'll know where to find you. So clearly she is going to come back into the picture at some point. Clearly somebody's going to go get her. So I'd say those are my big questions.
Gary, what are your lingering questions from WandaVision?
The townsfolk, they're all going to need years of therapy. But it is, if not overtly stated, it is strongly implied that they knew what was going on while it was happening, that they were coerced and forced to play these roles and kind of outside of their own bodies, if you will, while they were inhabiting the character of Wanda's design. But then they come to and they are themselves having full awareness of what has been transpiring is my take. Well, what's happening to them? What is happening to the town, which had clearly fallen into disrepair? What do they do with themselves, and what do they do with the town? How does it revitalize the town, or is it decimated? Does everybody move away? There's a lot of psychological implications to what she had done. She inflicted some serious emotional and mental damage here. She needs to be somehow held accountable for that. Number one, what happens to Wanda in that context, and what happens to the actual townspeople who were damaged. You know, I see a sequel in the form of a lawsuit show. So kind of like a Law and Order post WandaVision, where all we do is examine the lawsuits that happen as a result of Wanda's misdeeds.
Well, you know what, Gary, you might get that in She-Hulk, since She-Hulk Jennifer Walters is a lawyer, and they could be going for a Law and Order type of Marvel show.
Well, there you go.
I kind of hope with that.
But I am serious in that there's a lot of outstanding questions that hang over the town and the townsfolk.
And for that reason, I think it's going to be weird with that going forward, given how in the comic books this takes place before Civil War and is one of those ethical dilemmas that brought about superhuman registration in the comic books. Is we have characters that are powerful enough to do this type of thing on a global scale, but we've already dealt with that in the movies, and it wouldn't necessarily be that great for an audience to retread the exact same issues in another movie. So we'll see. But you're right, there needs to be some kind of ramifications for what has happened. Jalen, what questions linger in your brain?
One of mine is one that you kind of mentioned earlier, Ben, which was the fact that the cabin at the during the second end credit scene looked exactly like the same cabin that the Incredible Hulk was at the end of his movie. Is that the same cabin? What's up with that cabin? What do people learn at that cabin? There's something going on there. Like, that was too, like, it is not like, I might just actually go back tonight and rewatch, because I do have it on Blu-ray. I might actually just go back and rewatch The Incredible Hulk, which is a movie I actually do enjoy quite a bit. I think it's kind of unfairly, I think it's not as bad as other movies in the MCU. I think it is down there, but it's not the worst. But I might just go back and watch it, because it almost seems like it's filmed like the introduction of the cabin in both shows and in both things are filmed exactly the same way. Like, I'm really curious now, like, what's going on? Like, what is happening at this cabin? Is this Mephisto's cabin? Who knows? And then kind of piggybacking off of Gary's, the ramifications of what is going to happen, I think, as well. But on a different side, in addition to the townsfolk, I would say the ramifications of what's going to happen with Sword in the future is what I'm kind of curious about. Like, what were Haywood's motivations? Like, it got very, like, okay, this guy's been director of Sword for 5-ish years, I take it, because it looks like he took over after Monica got snapped, blip, whatever. But who does he answer to? And, who at Sword, like, because somebody obviously, is Nick Fury, is it Talos Nick Fury, or is it Nick Fury that, like, did somebody tell him, is he working for somebody that told him to get rid of Scarlet Witch? Like, what is his motivation for getting rid of Scarlet Witch? Because I don't think that was explained. Like, what was Sword's end game in all of this, I think, is what I'm also kind of curious about. And maybe that'll get answered in an Agent of Atlas show. But I'd be really curious, kind of moving forward, like, why was Sword working so hard to get rid of Scarlet Witch? Because I think it's beyond what's going on in Westview. Like, I think there was definitely something there before that was like, there's something, like, it couldn't have been just the Vision's body. Like, there's some deep motivation for wanting to get rid of Scarlet Witch. So I'm really curious as to what that is.
That just makes me think of one other question, which where were all the Hydra commercials coming from in the first few episodes? Along those lines, that just make like where were all these commercials for products with Hydra on them coming from?
Oh, like Strucker's watch and
Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering if there was
I kind of assumed
I'm wondering if there was like something to that.
I just assumed they were another level of Wanda's damaged psyche because they all relate back to some past trauma. The Stark toaster is obviously the missile. It has the same blinking red light on it. Strucker is, of course, the Hydra, commander who tested on her with the Mind Stone. They get a little weird and a little bit obtuse, like the magic yogurt one.
Oh yeah,
that was
yo magic.
Yeah. They did have an animated bit in the show. I forgot about that. They need to do now they need to do a very merry WandaVision Christmas all in claymation.
A WandaVision Christmas special. There we go. It's Christmas in Westview. We got to get a toy for the boys, and it just becomes Jingle All the Way with Paul Bettany trying to get a toy for the boys, which I would, now that I've mentioned it, would totally watch. Just remake Jingle All the Way with WandaVision characters, and I'm 100% in.
Kevin Feige, if you are watching this show, and I know you aren't, if you could please hire all of us to write for Marvel, because we're clearly the future. We know what audiences want.
We do. We do.
My big lingering question that hasn't really been addressed yet is, so we finally kind of have Wanda's powers retconned in the sense that they never really came from the Mind Stone. She had them all along, and the Mind Stone may have, helped bring them forward. But if Wanda really had powers all along, what does that mean for Pietro? Did he get his powers from the Mind Stone, or is he a mutant like Wanda? And Wanda, I don't know if witches in the MCU are mutants, but Wanda is of course a mutant in the comic books. Is Pietro a mutant? Are they still the gateway for the X-Men to come in? Who knows? And we probably won't know for quite a while because they're really, really, really waiting to get that one out the door.
And they can take their time with X-Men. Like, take your time, like, give it a breath. We're cool. Do it right. Just like with Fantastic Four. Please
do it right, and do it right, and know that whoever y'all get to play Wolverine may not have that impact right away. It's going to take a while to adjust, especially after crying through Logan.
Oof. Yeah, and anyone playing Xavier and not necessarily Magneto, but like somebody else playing. Yeah, hopefully an American actor that's bald. Well, just like Patrick Stewart, but I mean, there's a lot of great follically challenged American actors out there.
Well, we've done it. We've gotten through the very first Marvel Disney Plus television series. We have a few more in the pipeline for this year confirmed. We have Falcon and Winter Soldier coming up next Friday. It is already starting. And then we have Loki dropping on June 11th. What If is currently scheduled to premiere in the summertime. I have no doubt they'll make that release. And fingers crossed, we might get Miss Marvel by year's end. And then after that, at some point undisclosed in 2022, we're looking at Secret Invasion, which will bring the Skrulls back. And Samuel L. Jackson should come back for that. We have Moon Knight, and we have She-Hulk. Am I missing anything?
The Eternals.
That's not a TV show.
Oh, just TV shows. Okay.
Yeah, just TV for now. Because I want to ask, which of the already established Marvel TV shows are you looking forward to the most? Sarah, I'm going to go your way. We all know what it is, but I want to hear you say, we want to hear it. I want to hear you say it.
I think I'm most excited for She-Hulk. No, I'm definitely down for Loki. It's in my phone like the day it premieres. I have a reminder set.
And there is a trailer for that. It is weird. It might be weirder than WandaVision. It might not, but it's gonna be weird. It's gonna be weirder than Falcon and Winter Soldier. That's for sure. Well, Gary, what one are you looking forward to?
Sarah called it Loki. I just recently learned that the series takes place during the time heist when Loki disappears because he basically gets the cube. And then he disappears. He's gone. Where did he go? Well, we're about to find out. I'm totally intrigued by that idea. So that means we're getting evil Loki, not redemption Loki. So that's the one I'm most excited about. It's a whole new arc about Loki that we have no idea where they could go with it. It's a fresh narrative.
And the agency that Owen Wilson is working for, I can't remember the name exactly, but it's something to do with time displacement. So this could be another storyline that creeps its way into Doctor Strange with Loki. Shocking that Loki would screw things up on a cosmic scale. Loki could be doing exactly the same thing that Wanda's doing and screwing life up for everybody. And I'm looking forward to that very much.
Like he does.
Yeah. Loki being all Loki, being all Tom Hiddleston and such. So good.
Jalen, what show are you looking forward to the most?
Well, I mean, I am excited for Loki. I'm really excited for all these, but if I had to pick one, actually, it would be She-Hulk, I think is the one that I'm looking forward to the most. Be great to see the return of the Abomination and the return of Mark Ruffalo as Professor Hulk. But Tatiana Maslany, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which I could be or I could not be, is an absolute force to be reckoned with. And I'm excited to see, been a fan of her since Orphan Black. I saw her on Broadway and Network playing the Faye Dunaway role. She's absolutely phenomenal. So I'm excited to see her just show up in the MCU and just cut loose. Yeah. But I'm excited for all of these. Jeffrey Wright playing Utal the Watcher in What If. I'm excited for. I'm excited for Hawkeye to finally get something. And
forgot about Hawkeye.
And and Holly Stanfield is playing Kate Bishop in that. Secret Invasion. Just seeing Samuel L. Jackson and Ben Mendelsohn have that interplay again. I kind of wanted a Talos and Nick Fury show. But yeah, there's a lot to be excited for. But that's the one I'm most excited for. Just like 5%.
Well, for me, mine is way down the road. I'm most looking forward to Moon Knight because, I'm looking forward to all of them. But I know we've got Falcon and Winter Soldier and Loki coming up. But I'm just most excited to learn more about Moon Knight because he just is the closest we get to a major sort of Batman character for Marvel. That's that character that just absolutely scares the crap out of his villains with his just glowing white cape. And it's frickin' Oscar Isaac as Mark Spector. So we are in for a treat. Like,
I'm intrigued.
That, really, really just major applause here to Marvel casting for just, they have yet to fail. There were times back in the day where I would say, wait, what? The chubby guy from Parks and Rec? Or
just stop drinking beer.
Just stop drinking beer. That's right. Or the last time, for me, the last time that I questioned anything was Paul Rudd. It's like after Ant-Man was like, okay, I'm done questioning what y'all are doing over there, because you know, whatever you see in these people is obviously working out. So, and I would never have questioned Oscar Isaac for anything. So, Moon Knight for me. All right, we are at the closing thoughts segment of the show. So we're just going to go around. Sarah, what are your closing thoughts for WandaVision?
It was really fun to watch. It was entertaining. You know, it was funny. The sitcom angle was really awesome, but then it was also like really moving, and it was a crazy exploration of a girl's PTSD. Like, the girl has major PTSD. And it's not shocking that she would, then put that on other people, kind of not realizing it, because that's how PTSD and trauma works. Yeah. So, I mean, I loved that. Like Marvel, it was incredibly funny and entertaining and light, and also like incredibly moving and heartbreaking. So yeah, they definitely brought Marvel to TV in my opinion.
Gary, closing thoughts.
I think one of the most poignant lines in the entirety of the series was uttered by Vision in one of the latter episodes, when he says, and please forgive me, I am paraphrasing here, "What is grief if not love persevering?" That's what this show is about. Is, as you said, Sarah, this is her PTSD. This is her grief manifesting itself in this awesome, beautiful, impeccably well-written 9-episode story arc that just so happens to fuse these older sitcoms into the narrative, that creates comic balance to what is really a very deep subject matter that we can all relate to. We've all had somebody die. And it brings to the fore that contemplative notion of how do we deal with this grief? It is a form of energy that cannot be destroyed. It can only be converted. So what does Wanda turn this energy into? Those are the lingering questions that will be answered in the future. But to see her go through this cathartic experience is nothing short of profound.
Jalen, closing thoughts.
I think WandaVision is going to clean up come Emmy time. I'll be very surprised if it doesn't. I could definitely see some awards consideration for Elizabeth Olsen, Paul Bettany, and Catherine Hahn. I'd love to see them all win. I think this was a very brave thing that Marvel did, to put something out that was about a subject like this. And it's not just Wanda that went through that was dealing with grief as well. Monica Rambeau's arc in this, while not as wide, also has kind of a very similar arc where I think a lot of her drive to get back in there and fix things, I think, is partially motivated by the time that she didn't have with her mom. And I think that for not only for Marvel to make something like this, but to have it be the first thing that they release, I think it was a very brave. Again, Kevin Feige rolls the dice, and it always comes up 7. So he's just like the best good luck charm you could have. So in Kevin Feige we trust. In Kevin Feige we trust. All praise be to the Feige. Please don't mess up Fantastic Four. Or just please don't mess up Doctor Doom. Please just don't mess up Doctor Doom. I can't wait. In Feige we trust.
Marvel has set a high bar for its television programming moving forward with WandaVision. I don't know what to expect going forward with Loki, with She-Hulk, with Moon Knight, with Secret Invasion. I do have a feeling of what I'm going to get with Falcon and Winter Soldier, but I don't doubt that it is going to meet that level of quality. What I love about these television shows is it is going to allow Marvel to experiment in a way that they haven't gotten to with their films as much, and it may end up influencing what they do with their films going forward. So if you are out there and saying to yourself, I'm not going to watch I'm a Marvel fan, but I don't want to watch WandaVision because I don't want to invest in content that's not, cinematic, I highly suggest that you do. Because one, you're missing out on a good story, and two, a year and change from now, when Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is released and you see Elizabeth Olsen on screen in this brand new costume with all new powers, you're going to wonder what the hell happened. So please, and you're going to wonder what happened with Monica, in between Captain Marvel and now. What happened to her that she became so super heroic? And it gives you another wonderful chance to see Jimmy Woo and Darcy before, and hope that they get to come back in some way in future television shows or movies. Because, Marvel is figuring out how to use these side characters well. And it's like you said, Jalen, he's rolling sevens. In Feige we trust.
Flourish.
Marvel has, it's managed to work out. On that note, it is time for trivia. And guess what, everybody? I did not prepare a trivia question, but I'm going to try and throw one in off the cuff. I'm afraid it's going to be a little bit too easy, so I have a feeling that everyone might walk away with a point tonight. I have a feeling.
Ooh.
So hang on one second. Let me dig deep down into my brain and come up with some hopefully misleading answers. We'll see. One second. Okay, we're gonna try this. We're gonna try this trivia. See if I can remember the answers in the correct order. So
you didn't say that we're gonna have to riff tonight.
Yeah, I didn't wear my improv pants.
Hey, you're all theater people. You should all know how to do this. So, Wanda and Pietro's origin in the MCU is retconned from their origins in the comics. In the comic books, they are the children of which major Marvel character? Is it A, Kang the Conqueror, B, Magneto, C, Thanos, or D, Namor the Submariner?
I actually know the answer to this.
Well, then you're going last, Gary.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, we'll go to you first.
I think it's B, Magneto.
Jalen.
I am also going to say B, Magneto.
Gary.
It is Magneto.
The answer is, in fact, Magneto. Everyone gets a point tonight because I forgot to come up with a harder question. But hey, guess what?
Woo!
That means that I believe that means that Jalen is ahead of everyone with 2, and Gary and Sarah, you're both finally on the board.
Point.
Hey.
So bask in your glory for the foreseeable future. What do we have coming up on the show? Well, everyone, it's March, and I am very, very excited because on March 31st, after so many delays, we are finally going to see Godzilla versus Kong, a rematch about 60 years in the making. And we are going to be building up to that with about 4 or 5 kaiju-centric episodes starting next week, which means that you probably won't be seeing familiar faces like Sarah and Gary.
Yeah.
No, because I have to invite other Godzilla experts onto this show because my theater friends aren't those kind of nerds. but it's going to be
We get
really
to come back
exciting.
for a Falcon and Winter Soldier spoiler cast.
We will probably do that.
Okay.
We'll very likely have a
Look forward
Falcon
to
and
that.
Winter Soldier
And then we can
spoiler
talk about how bad the 1998 one is with Matthew Broderick and Jean Reno. Oh God, that awful, awful.
Oh, it's
awful
bad.
movie.
It's bad.
Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad.
But this has been the WandaVision spoiler cast. I hope you had a good time. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you to Sarah and Gary and Jalen. I'm Ben Stahl. This is the Sunday Matinee. You can catch us on Facebook.com/truthinfilm, on Twitter at Sunday_matinee, and on our blog at WordPress. Hang on, I always get this wrong. I'm going to make sure I get it right. At truthinfilm.wordpress.com. Everyone, have a good night. And in Feige, we trust.
Feige, we trust.
Feige, we trust. Praise be to the Feige.